I invite you to open your Bibles tonight. I'm going to look at some things here with us this evening. So I invite your attention to the book of Jeremiah and to chapter 7, please. The book of Jeremiah and chapter 7. Jeremiah was a prophet whom Yahweh raised up to speak again to the nation of Israel. And what he had to say about Israel was not flattering. But whenever Yahweh sends a prophet, and he always sends prophets, that is, he always sends someone to speak to us about our situation and why we are experiencing what we are experiencing. And Yahweh's judgments are always redemptive in nature. That is, the things that are happening to us are happening because we have violated, we have failed in some way to keep covenant with Yahweh, and as a result of that, certain things happen. And the things that happen are called curses, for they come under the umbrella of cursings. And anything that's not a blessing is a cursing, and curses come as a result of some way, somehow, having failed in keeping covenant relationship with Yahweh. And though Yahweh causes or allows those things to happen because he wants us to know there is a consequence of disobedience. There is not only a blessing of obedience, but there is a consequence for disobedience. Now, disobedience may not necessarily be overt. That is, we may not rise up in anger. We may not deliberately say, well, I'm not going to do that. Our disobedience may simply be just neglect. It may just simply be good intentions never fulfilled. I'm sure you've never promised to do something and failed to do it. I'm sure that you don't know anyone who has made promises and failed to keep them. I imagine that most of us at some point have done that, and some of us sort of live in that place, and we come to the place where the people around us do not want any more promises. They just like some performance. And Yahweh doesn't want us to keep on promising. He wants us to perform. So let's look at what the prophet Jeremiah, by Holy Spirit, has to say to the nation of Israel and see what lessons we can learn from this tonight. The word that came to Jeremiah from Yahweh saying, stand in the gate of Yahweh's house and proclaim there this word and say, Yahweh says, Jeremiah, go stand in the gate to the temple, the house of the Lord. Now here's what I want you to say. Hear the word of Yahweh, all you of Judah, who enter in at these gates to worship Yahweh. Now he's not talking to those who've said, I have no time for God. He's talking to those who have come to worship, come to the place of worship, come at the right time of worship. So he's not speaking to people who are declared rebels. He's not speaking to people who said, I have no interest in God. He's not sent to testify and speak to people who have rejected the Lord outright. He is sent to talk to those who, by all intents and purposes, by the declaration of their own mouth and by the actions, that they are worshipers. So lest we be quick tonight to engage ourselves from this word and say, well, this doesn't apply to me because I'm someone, I declare that I love the Lord. I'm someone that I come to the church. I come to the assembly. Well, that's the message. That's the group of people to whom the message was sent. To people like you and me. I hope that maybe we'll not qualify in other areas, but they didn't think they qualified either. Mm-hmm. You see, they would have said, oh, we're fine. Everything's okay. I regularly attend services at the house of God. I regularly go through all of the prescribed directives. I bring the right sacrifice. I'm very meticulous, very careful about this. And so they would have assumed that if Yahweh had a word of rebuke, it certainly did not include them. How mistaken they were. Hear the word of Yahweh, all you of Judah who enter in at these gates to worship Yahweh. Now there had come a division in the nation of Israel between what we call Israel and Judah. There had come a division sometime after the death of King David, where some tribes didn't like what was going on, and so there arose a division, and essentially 10 of the tribes pulled away from Judah and Benjamin and established their own identities, became another nation. So you had these two parallel divisions. You had Israel and Judah, and each one of them had a king. Now, the place that Yahweh had established for Israel to worship him was in Judah, in Jerusalem. So what had happened, one of the kings of Israel had established that they would carry on the same kind of worship in Samaria. And so we had these two kingdoms, both of them now saying that they were Yahweh's representatives. Almost sounds like today, only we've multiplied it many times. Everybody believing that they represent Yahweh, everybody believing they speak for him, everybody believing that you ought to do it the way they do it. And so we have Israel worshiping at Samaria, but we have Judah down here. Now, Judah is saying, hey, those Israelites, our brothers that have forsaken us, you can't worship in Samaria. Yahweh never said anything about worshiping in Samaria. That's all man's doing. That's all substitute. It won't work. You cannot offer sacrifices in Samaria. You cannot go up to Samaria to worship Yahweh. Here in Judah, in Jerusalem, is the only place that you can legally worship Yahweh. So they feel they have everything going for them. They are the declared worshipers. They have remained in the assigned place, and they have the building, and they have all of the ceremonies, and they have everything on their side. So they would never have suspected that Yahweh was unhappy with them, especially about their worship. So let's read on. He says to those who are entering at the house of Yahweh to worship Yahweh, he says to them, amend your ways and your doings. I don't like the way you're living. I do not approve of the things that you are doing. But if you will amend your ways and will amend your doings, I will cause you to dwell in this place. The implication being, if you do not amend your ways, if you do not amend and change how you're doing, I will remove you. You see, they felt that there was some kind of security that Yahweh would give to them as long as they remained in the right place. As long as they remained in Judah and they had access to Jerusalem and to Mount Zion, and they had access to the house of Yahweh, and they had access to all of the ritual and all the ceremonies and all of the sacrifices, that there was no one that could touch them. They were safe there. But Yahweh said, if you do not change your ways and do not change how you're living, then you will not be allowed to remain here. Do not trust in these lying words. What are the lying words he says don't trust in? Here it is. The temple of Yahweh, the temple of Yahweh, the temple of Yahweh. In other words, we have the right name, we have the right place, we have the right building, we have the right everything. Therefore, we are safe. And he said, that's a lie. And You know, it's not believing the right things, it's not doing the right things religiously that will make our ways pleasing unto Yahweh. We can go through all the ceremonies at the right time, in the right way, the right place, and be absolutely repugnant to him. And Israel was believing a lie. They were saying, hey, I can understand why Yahweh would be upset with Israel. They've left. They've gone their own way. They're bowing down to golden idols. They're worshiping in the wrong place. They can't come at the right time. We can understand why Yahweh's not pleased with them. But us, hey, we got it. We got the right activities. We got the right ceremonies. Everybody wears the right stuff. We got the right place. We got the right name. Hey, we got it. He said, no, you don't have it. If you're trusting in that, you're trusting in a lie. Doesn't matter how much it's preached. Doesn't matter how strong you believe it. Doesn't matter how you're committed to it. It's a lie. If you believe a lie, you're going to be damned. So do not trust in these lying words. The temple of Yahweh, the temple of Yahweh, the temple of Yahweh are these. For if you thoroughly amend your ways and your doings, if you thoroughly execute judgment between a man and his neighbor, if you do not oppress the stranger, if you do not oppress the fatherless, if you do not oppress the widow, and if you do not shed innocent blood in this place or walk after other gods to your hurt, then I will cause you to dwell in this place, in the land that I gave to your fathers forever and ever. He's saying, you are not doing what I instructed you to do. I'm more concerned about how you live than how you worship. I'm more concerned about how you live out there in relationship to people, specifically those who are beneath you in some way, and those whom you have the power and the ability to help. I'm more concerned about your attitude toward the stranger, or the alien, we might say, and the fatherless, and the widow, and the shedding of innocent blood, and the intrusion of the worship of other things than myself. And I'm not particularly impressed by the fact that you've got your worship program down 1, 2, 3. I'm not particularly impressed that you come at the right time. You go through all the right formalities, but you are missing it. And if you do not change the way you live, if you do not change the way you relate, if you have no time, no concern for those who are being oppressed, and you cannot turn aside to help them, you're too busy coming to worship me because you're going to be seen of your friends. You're going to go through all the right things, but you're going to be like the Pharisee that Yeshua told about, who came alongside of a man who had been beset and attacked by robbers and had been beaten and left for dead. And the Levite came by and looked at the man and passed on. And the priest came by and looked at the man and passed on. Why? Because they had business to attend. They had to go to worship. They had to go to church. They had to go to worship. They had to do the right thing. But they had no time, no interest, no heart to bother themselves, to get involved, to turn aside to this one man who needed help. And Yahweh said, if you don't change this, you're not going to live here. But if you'll change, then I will cause you to dwell in this place. And I will cause you to dwell here, this land that I gave to your fathers forever and ever. I gave it to them, but you see, This is a trust. This land is held in trust, and you must fulfill the terms of the trust. Behold, you trust in lying words that cannot profit. If you're trusting in the fact that you have it all together, you do the right thing the right way, but you're not doing the things that I want you to do, and you're not living out this life the way you ought to, then I will remove you. Will you steal? Will you murder? Will you commit adultery? Will you swear falsely? Will you burn incense to Baal and walk after other gods whom you do not know, and then come and stand before me in this house, which is called by my name, and say, we are delivered to do all these abominations? If we believe that we in any fashion or form or any degree can steal, can murder, either by weapons or by words, if we can commit adultery either actually or vicariously, by means of music, by means of video, by means of television, by means of whatever, if we can swear falsely, we need to question credence we give to the ungodly. When the ungodly are invited into our homes to bring an ungodly message, and we repeatedly expose ourselves to that, we invite that into our homes without any opportunity to resist, to rebut, to disagree. When we swear falsely, when we burn incense to Baal, Baal was one of the gods that Israel took to, but it simply is representative of things of this world, things of the material realm that men and women give themselves to. And we need to be very careful that we do not use the affluence, the blessing, the prosperity that we receive through covenant relationship with Yahweh, and now allow that very affluence, that very strength to take us hither and there and spend our money on this, that, and the other, always trying to find out how we can acquire more stuff and give very little thought to how can we employ this, how can we use this in our outreach into all the world, of course, our community included. And then we're going to come and stand before Yahweh and stand before him in his house and say, we are delivered to do all these abominations. Israel had somehow come to the idea that the blessing of Yahweh had freed them from certain responsibilities and had now actually given them that through their covenant relationship with Yahweh, that the prosperity, the affluence, the blessing that had come into their life had now given them liberty to really commit adultery with the world's political system, the world's religious system, the world's economic system. And I know that I'm talking about things tonight that each individual must judge for themselves. But what is the motivation of our heart in believing Yahweh for better things? Where is our interest? Where is our heart? Are we concerned for the salvation of the lost? Are we concerned that the gospel be preached in all the world? Are we doing what we can to employ ourselves and employ the leisures and employ the affluence that we have through the covenant relationship with Yahweh, through the blessing of Yahweh? Are we now as interested in using that to employ it in doing what we're called to do? Have we been deceived into believing that the very affluence has delivered us from certain responsibilities? If so, then we are believing a lie. Has this house, which is called by my name, become a den of thieves in your eyes? Do you really believe, Yahweh says, that just because you come into my house, that you are robbing me, you're robbing me of the honor, you're robbing me of the tithe, you're robbing me of the offering, you're robbing me of the commitment I called you, Israel, to be a witness to all the nations of the world? Do you really believe that just coming into this house that is called by my name, do you really believe that just coming into here and going through all the worship that you are now removed from the responsibility? If you do, then you're believing a lie. Has this house, which is called by my name, become a den of thieves in your eyes? Behold, even I, have seen it. He said, now, if you think that there is security in your present relationship, if you think that there is divine security because you dwell in the right place, and you have the right name and the right building and the right everything, take a trip with me. Yahweh says to Israel, take a trip with me. Let's go back into not distant history. And the same attitude that I'm seeing in you now was present in my people at Shiloh. They began to believe that simply because they were under my name, under my banner, in my house, in my place of worship, doing the right thing the right way, that there was security there. But all of this external could not forever hide the fact that their hearts were far from me. It was one more time when it was said, this people draw near to me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And Yahweh is referring here to the time that culminates in the death of Eli, the high priest. Oh, it was business as usual. And everything looked okay on the outside. It was a prosperous time. And the sons of Eli were enjoying every moment of it and were gorging themselves. The ministry had come to a place where it was more concerned for its belly. It had made their belly their God. And they had were not managing financial things. They were greedy for filthy lucre. They were not satisfied with anything. They always wanted more because they had proved again that when anyone begins to feed the appetite of the flesh, that individual has started something that's impossible. Because the flesh is so demanding that the more that is given to it, then the more is required. Every system that man begins will always require more. That's the reason that the tax base is never enough. It seems to me just such a simple thing as schools. I don't know what percentage of the tax money, say 30 years ago, was used to support the school system. But it would seem to me that the same percentage of taxes would be sufficient today. In other words, if 10% of the taxes collected in 1940 were sufficient to provide a good educational system, it would seem to me that inflation, I know, increases the amount, but the percentage ought to be constant. But it never is. It seems to me that if a certain percentage of taxes was sufficient to build and maintain the highways of Florida in 1950, that the same percentage of taxes ought to be sufficient today. Because there's more being paid, but the percentage ought to be remaining the same. But I don't care what it is, whether it's in the political arena or whether it's in my own life. It's something that we must guard against, something we must be aware of. when we were living in tar paper shacks, it didn't take a big house to satisfy us. When we had 2 rooms and an outhouse, thought of having 2 bedrooms and an indoor toilet would have just satisfied any of us. But when we began to feed that animal, it's never enough. So we do it personally. We do it in society. We are constantly tearing down and building something bigger. What used to be, I drive through some parts of this city and I see houses you can tell during what period of time they were built. I see brick homes that maybe have 1,200 square feet at the most in them. In that day, back in the 40s, early 50s, that was considered, an absolute mansion by people who could afford them. I remember when Shirley and I looked at a home that had 1,300 square feet of space. We thought that was a dream. I mean, you couldn't want anything more than that. But there wouldn't be any way we could live in that today. At least our flesh tells us we couldn't. And always blessing brings with it greater responsibility. Brings with it the need to be more careful. We need to remember that there is no place of security. There is no activity that it makes you secure. There is no name, nothing. He said, go, if you don't think that I will remove you from this place, if you think that Judah, if you think that Mount Zion is too holy for Yahweh to touch, if you think I won't blow this mountain to smithereens, if you don't think I'll remove you from here, if you don't think I'll tear this building down, go back to Shiloh. They thought they had it made. They thought that place was too holy for Yahweh to. Ain't nothing touched this place. Nothing's ever going to pull this thing down. We're here in the name of the Lord. But he said, go to my place which was in Shiloh, where I set my name at the first, and see what I did to it. If you remember, the story culminates things just degenerating. Eli gets fatter and fatter and fatter. No discipline in his life. There was no financial discipline. His sons, now the priests, the Levites, had every right to live off of what was brought in. They did not steal one thing they did not take one thing that did not belong to them. But their attitude, their heart was greedy. When the people would bring their sacrifices, the priests were so greedy, Eli's sons, they would not even allow the people to properly prepare them, properly cook them. I mean, things are boiling. They got their big meat hook there, in there. Nah, ain't it big enough? No, I got to have a bigger. They wanted more and more and more. And they forgot that they were dealing with holy things. They forgot that they were dealing with holy people. Now, I know the people were not living any better than the priest. But because they represented Yahweh, because those priests represented Yahweh, because that house was there in the name of Yahweh, then Yahweh was judging that house and judging everything about it. You see, the Levites and the priests were not excused to treat the people and their offerings with no respect because the people were living like devils. As a minister, I have a right to live from the tithe and offering. But it doesn't matter how dirty you live or how the tither is living, I'm not allowed to treat what he or she brings with any less respect. I must keep a control on my appetite. I believe one of the reasons that Yahweh led me in the beginning many years ago when we were able to change some things about the financial affairs of this house was to set some limitations. Because I've never seen a preacher, because they're like everybody else, I've never seen a preacher that doesn't want more. I've never seen a preacher that can't spend more. I've never seen a preacher that won't take more if he has opportunity. And there's nothing wrong with him having more if it's there, but his heart, his attitude, is he just simply using that to elevate his consumption of things, because there comes a point beyond which we cannot raise our standard of living. We can raise the standard of our consumption, but I suggest to you that the man who's living in a $5 million house he does not enjoy a higher lifestyle than the man living in a $100,000 house. All he's done is increase the amount of consumption. He's increased his indebtedness to the world. He's increased the idols in his life. I'm not suggesting that you sell everything and go buy a Jim Walters home. But I'm saying that we need to be very careful about our heart, about our attitude, and realize that if we do not discipline these areas of our life, there are reasons why Yahweh takes time in the Bible with such little space to tell us what the sin of Eli and his sons was. There was, and I don't know that these took place in the particular order, but there was a sin, first of all, of lack of respect for the tithe and the offering. There was not careful management under the authority of heaven. They were simply wanting more and more and more and more for their own flesh appetite. They weren't wanting more to reach more people. They were not wanting more to better glorify Yahweh. They were wanting more because they had created something within them that would never be satisfied, because there is no way to satisfy the flesh. I don't care what it is, you always want more. I don't care what it is. Sports, you always want more. In business, you always want more. Even in church growth, you always want more. And a lot of what goes on in the name of the Lord is nothing more than the fulfillment of personal ambition, personal desire, lust of the flesh, pride of life. And Yahweh says, when we become guilty of that, we better amend our ways, and we better amend the way we're doing things, or He will remove us. And there is no place of security in a name, an experience, or a past history. And so there's a reason why Yahweh draws attention to the fact that the sons of Eli were grabbing for more stuff. There's a reason why the Bible describes the physical condition of the high priest. They go together. Uncontrolled, out of control, finances will very often be associated with an out-of-control appetite. Some people eat more than they need to because they have created a desire, a lust for stuff. And some people, when financial trouble, they eat out of anxiety. But it's all an uncontrolled appetite that needs to be brought under. There's a reason why the Bible says there are three particular sins that these people were guilty of. The sin of not respecting the tithe and the offering, the sin of gluttony, and the sin of adultery. And then in the ministry, they go together so often. The fellow, the man, the preacher that will not discipline himself financially is opening a strong possibility of becoming physically unfit and morally unfit. He said, amend your ways. Verse 12 again, but go now if you think you're secure because you are worshiping in a house that has my name on it and in a place where I put my name. Let me remind you, take a little history lesson, go back to Shiloh and see that that was not a place of guaranteed security either. But go now to my place which was in Shiloh, where I set my name at the first, and see what I did to it because of the wickedness of my people. And now, because you have done all these works, says Yahweh, and I spoke to you, rising up early and speaking, but you did not hear, and I called you, but you did not answer. Therefore I will do to the house which is called by my name, in which you trust, and to this place which I gave to you and your fathers, as I have done to Shiloh. The very blessing, the very provision of Yahweh can become a curse, can become a cursed place, can become a cursed thing if it is not handled rightly. Therefore I will do to the house which is called by my name, in which you trust, and to this place which I gave to you and your fathers, as I have done to Shiloh. And I will cast you out of my sight, as I have cast out all your brethren, the whole posterity of Ephraim. Let me remind us of the final chapter in Eli. One of the daughter-in-laws, first of all, Eli, big fat Eli, is sitting on his seat. And Israel is in a battle to the death. And somebody says, we're losing this war. What we need is Yahweh to help us. And somebody says, go back to Shiloh and get the Ark of the Covenant and bring it and put it down here in the midst of this battle. It's always been our deliverance before. Surely the Lord will be with us. Surely His glory will be a rebuke to our enemies. Surely we cannot lose the battle if we have the Ark of the Covenant here in our midst. But there's always a danger of thinking that because you have certain things and certain experiences and certain activities and whatever, that is guarantee of Yahweh's presence. There's a whole lot of stuff and a whole lot of activities and a whole lot of things that go on in the name of the Lord that at one time had the touch of Yahweh on it, had the presence of Yahweh in it. But the trouble is, He long ago departed. And so they took the Ark of the Covenant out there into battle, and lo and behold, it had no power. There was no presence. There was no glory. There was no rebuke to the unrighteous. The unrighteous seized the men who brought it, killed them, and took the Ark of the Covenant. I mean, Yahweh had said that if anybody other than a Levite in Israel touched this thing, that they would die. But these people took it and ran away with it and rejoiced in it and never got killed because of it, because they were not in covenant with Yahweh. And so the very thing, the very presence, the very activity, the very piece of furniture that they were sure would guarantee victory was lost in the battle too. Not only that, but his sons died. And he's sitting up there, too fat, too old, too dim to go. He lived far beyond his time. He's 98 years old. And word comes to him that the ark is gone and his sons are dead, and he falls over and breaks his neck and dies. One of the daughters-in-law was expecting a child, and this, if she were not due, the traumatic events of this day brought on the delivery of that child. And when it came, she named him Ichabod, declaring that the Spirit of the Lord has departed. He does not live at this address anymore. I believe the underlying spiritual reason why the Jewish people got away from the use of the name Yahweh. They got away from his name and no longer will be identified with his name, because Yahweh said, if you're going to live like that, I'm divorcing you. If you're going to live like that, if you're going to behave like that, if you're not going to represent the family name, then I will not allow you to use that name anymore. Now, we're living in a day, and we are a part of a people whom Yahweh has raised up and given us opportunity to be a part of the restoration of the recognition and usage of his name. But along with that revelation goes great responsibility. And that responsibility cannot just be fulfilled by believing the right thing and by writing and singing songs about Yahweh and Yeshua, but it must be reflected in our living. It must be reflected in our values. You see, Israel substituted for the name Yahweh the name Baal. Now, that word has been translated in the English to Lord. And so you have this strange parody of things here, the name being rejected, and the name of an idol god being inserted, but now that being translated Lord, and yet people are identifying and calling him Lord, but he is not Lord because a master dictates what's done. And we find ourselves, if we're not careful, in the same predicament and the same somewhat humorous but difficult position that Peter got in when Yahweh said that, when Yeshua rather said that he was going to be crucified. Peter said, "Not so, Lord." Hello? No, not so, Lord. You're Lord. You make the decision, but I'm telling you, you're not going to do that. See, it's how we live. Are we living out the Lordship of Christ? Are we living out, is he really master? Or do we somehow think that our faith in him and the blessing of covenant relationship through him has brought us all these blessings? Are we now free? That's what Israel said. Oh, we're free to do this now. We're free to live like this. We're free to worship Baal. You don't get so too narrow-minded on me. Why, yeah, I know I got a Baal sitting up in the house, but you know it's no big thing. I'm free. I'm broad-minded now. I know they used to think that way back in the old days, but they were narrow-minded then. Yeah, I know they said you couldn't participate in that, but we're free now. Has our freedom in Christ been so misconstrued that it has now become a license to our rebellious way of living? Has our blessing of prosperity simply become a license to become indulgent in our flesh? Has our ability to go and come and do actually now relieved us and given us liberty so that, I don't really need church. I'll be there, preacher, yes. If I don't have somewhere else to go. But I'm free. I'm free to spend night after night doing this, that, and the other. I'm free to spend hours and hours doing this and that and the other. But you see, I'm free. I'm not in bondage anymore. I've got out of that narrow-minded religion. I don't live like that anymore. I'm free. That's what Israel was doing, and Yahweh said they were believing a lie. And he said, if you don't amend your ways and change what you're doing, I will remove you. I don't want to be removed, do you? I want to finish. Do you? Amen. I will cast you out of my sight. Let's read verse 14 again. Therefore I will do to the house which is called by my name, which you trust, and to this place which I gave to you and your fathers, as I have done to Shiloh. And I will cast you out of my sight, as I have cast out all your brethren, the whole posterity of Ephraim. Why do you think Israel is gone? Why do you think Ephraim is gone? Judah? You think you're somehow my special? You think I will judge you differently than I judged your brothers? Ephraim is gone. Israel is separated from you. The kingdom has been divided because their heart went a-whoring after other things. Would not let me be God. And so he says, I will cast you out of my sight as I've cast out all your brethren, the whole posterity of Ephraim. Therefore, he says to Jeremiah, do not pray for this people, nor lift up a cry or prayer for them, nor make intercession to me, for I will not hear you. Do you not see what they do in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem? And they pour out drink offerings to other gods, that they may provoke me to anger. And the whole nation was exposed to the fire of his glory. And the whole nation heard the voice of Yahweh speaking out of the fire. He said, it was never my desire to have you burning up all these animals. It was never my desire. Every time they burned a sacrifice, every time they went through one of those rituals, it was a reminder to themselves and to the world that they had been reduced to animal sacrifice because they would not live in the presence. We need to be careful lest we come to believe a lie that tells us that we can offer up sacrifices of prayer, clapping of our hands, dancing of our feet, shouting of our voice, on and on and on. Our church attendance, our tithing, our giving, anything we ever allow take the place of a heart-to-heart, face-to-face relationship with Him. If we believe any or all of it will make us okay, then we're believing a lie. Because the only thing that He will approve, the only thing that delights is someone that loves Him with all of the heart, the soul, the mind, and the strength. The only thing that delights Him is someone that loves Him passionately and adores Him above all other things, all other people. If my people, who are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land.